Hi Year 6, welcome to Wednesday's maths lesson. Today we're going to be looking at finding the volume of cubes and cuboids. But before we move on to the main part of our lesson, we have got our 6 arithmetic questions and our 2 stretch questions if you're choosing to have a go at those this morning. So as usual, if you pause the video and have a go at those questions, and then I'll go through the answers. Okay, question 1, 3 squared. Remember, 3 squared means 3 times 3, so the answer we were looking for there is 9. Question 2, 0.5 times 650. Remember, 0.5 is the same as a half. So the question is just asking what is half of 650. So we were looking for the answer 325. Question 3, we've got 10 divided by 5 at 2. This is a BODMAS question. Okay, and in this question then we've got a divide and we've got an add. So we've got a divide and add. We're going to do the division first because that comes first in BODMAS. So first of all we're going to do 10 divided by 5, which is 2, and then we're going to add 2, which gives the answer 4. Question 4. A fraction divided by a whole number. Remember, when we do this, the numerator stays the same, and it's the denominator that will change. D for divide, D for denominator. So we're going to do 5 times 5, which is 25. Okay. Question 5. What is 4/5 of 240? Remember, to find a fraction of an amount, you divide by the denominator and then times by the numerator. So first of all, I need to do 240 divided by 5. Now, off the top of my head, I don't know what that is, so I'm going to need to do a little bus stop then. So I'm going to do my 240 and I'm going to divide it by 5. So I'm going to ask myself, how many 5s go into 2? Well, that's 0. How many 5s go into 24? That's 4, with 4 left over. How many 5s go into 40? That's 8. So the question is asking me to find 4/5 of 240. By dividing by 5, I found 1/5, which is 48. Next, I've got to times that by 4. So I've got to do 48 times by 4. Again, in my head, I don't know what that is, so I'm going to need to do a little short multiplication. 4 times 8 is 32. 4 times 4 is 16, add my 3 gives 19, 192. Okay, question 6, we've got a fraction times a fraction. Remember, to do this, we times the numerators and then we times the denominators. So 2 times 4 gives me 8 and 3 times 6 gives me 18. So my answer is 8/18. Stretch questions, if you had a go at those. Number 1, we were looking for the answer 353,878. And question 2, the answer we were looking for was 63. Okay then, year 6. As usual then, we've got our 1 minute of times table practice. So if you pause the video now, time yourself for a minute and have a go. Okay, hopefully you've gotten all right with that then so far. As I said at the beginning of the video, today we're going to be looking at something called volume. Now, when we're talking about 3D shapes, volume is the amount of space occupied by the shape, or I think of it as the amount of stuff inside that shape. And we can only have volume when we're talking about 3D shapes. So when we're talking about 2D shapes, we talked about area, and how much space the 2D shape took up. That was the area. But in 3D shapes, when we're thinking about all the things in all the space inside a shape, we call that volume. Now, to find the volume of a shape, we have to use this formula, just like we have been doing with area, both this week and last week. So to find the volume of a shape, the formula is length times depth times height. So I'm going to take this cuboid that I've got here. Now, when I'm talking length, I'm talking about this side here. The depth, I'm talking about how deep the cuboid is, how far it goes back. So I'm talking about this measurement here. And the height is how tall the cuboid is. So I can look up the side here and think about that. So just like with area, sometimes when you're looking at volume questions, they might give you cubes, like I've got here. Other times, they might just give you the shapes and the measurements, okay? So first of all, these shapes are made up of cubes. So if they give you cubes, first of all, you need to count the number of cubes along the length. Well, there's 1, 2. Okay, so I'm going to write a little 2. Count the number of cubes the shape goes back, so the depth then. So it goes 1, 2. So again, it's 2. And finally, count how many cubes tall the shape is. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and multiply these together. So I've got to multiply my length by my depth by my height. So I'm going to do 2 times 2 times 3. So first of all, I do 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, and then I've got to multiply that answer by 3. So I wrote it out, 2 times 2 times 3. Right. 2 times 2 is 4, times that by 3 gives me the answer 12. Now when we do this kind of question, I have to get children to say to me, well, I don't know, I'm getting a bit confused, which one's the length and which one's the depth? It doesn't actually matter, okay? This is my length, this is my depth, and this is my height, but as long as I know the 3 measurements, it doesn't matter which one's which, because I could do these numbers in a different order. I could have done 3 times 2 times 2. Okay, I'm multiplying them in a different order, so I haven't done it in the order of length times depth times height. I've actually done height times length times depth. Let's try it and see if I get the same answer then. 3 times 2 is 6, times by 2 gives me 12. Okay, so each time I've got the same answer, so don't worry about which one's the length and which one's the depth and which one's the height. As long as you know the 3 measurements, you'll get the right answer. Now volume, we measure volume in centimetres cubed. So remember, area we measure it in centimetres squared and had a little 2, but volume we measure it in centimetres cubed. That's because these shapes are made up of little cubes. Okay, area is always measured in centimetres cubed or metres cubed. Okay, so you've seen me do this first one. Now I'm going to show you the second one as well, and then there's some underneath my purple square for you to purple rectangle for you to have a go at. Okay, so this time then, my length going up the side, I've got 2 squares. So my length is 2. My depth, it only goes back 1 cube, so my depth is 1, and my height is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So my height is 6. So I've just got to multiply these numbers together. Remember, it does not matter what order I put the numbers in. As long as I know the numbers, it doesn't matter what order they go in. So 6 times 1 is 6, times that by 2, 12. So the volume of this shape is 12 centimetres cubed. So actually, these 2 shapes, they've both got the same volume. They take up the same amount of space. Okay then, Year 6, I'm going to remove that purple rectangle so that you can have a go at some of your own fluency questions then. Okay, so there's 3 cuboids there. Using the formula length times depth times width, I'd like you to pause the video and work out the volume of each of those cuboids. Okay, hopefully you've had a go at that then. The first one, the length was 2, the depth of this one was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the height was 1. So we had to do 6 times 2 times 1. 6 times 2 is 12, times that by 1 was 12. So it was 12 centimetres cubed. Okay, the next one, my length was 3, my depth was 3, and my height on this one was 2. So I had to do 2 times 3 times 3. 2 times 3 is 6, times that by 3 gives me 18. 18 centimetres cubed. Next one, We've got the length is 2, the depth is 3, the height is 2. 3 times 2 is 6, times by 2 is 12 centimetres cubed. Okay, hopefully this is all making sense so far, Year 6. Fluency 2 then, exactly the same, still got that same formula, but this time it's perhaps even easier. I don't actually have to worry about counting the little cubes within the shape. Okay, first of all though, I've got a cube. So they have just given me the length, which is 6 centimetres. If it's a cube, and think about what you know about cubes, do you know the depth and the height of the cube? Okay, hopefully you know that cubes have all equal sides. So if the length is 6, the depth must be 6, and the height must also be 6. So to find the volume of this cube, I've got to do 6 times 6 times 6. Right, 6 times 6 is 36, and then I've got to times that by 6. Now, that's quite tricky maths for me to do in my head, so it's absolutely fine to do a short multiplication. So I did the first part in my head, because I know what 6 times 6 is. 6 times 6 is 36, and then I'm just timesing it by 6 again. Right, 6 times 6 again is 36, carry my 3. 6 times 3 is 18, add my 3. Ooh, I'm doing that wrong. 18, add 3. Come on, Mrs. Withers. 18 add 3 is 21, isn't it? So my answer then is 216. Remember, we write it in centimetres cubed, so it's 216 centimetres cubed. Okay. Next I've got a cuboid, which has a length of 12. It has a depth of 4, and it has a height of 2. So I'm going to do 12 times 4 times 2. 12 times 4 is 48, times by 2, 48 times by 2. If I know what that is, great. If I don't know, I could do a little multiplication, but I know 48 times 2 is 96. Okay, I'd like you to pause the video now then, or in a second. I'd like you to pause the video now then, Year 6, and have a go at these 4 questions. See if you can find the volume of each. Okay, the first one is a cube then, so we know that the height is 2 centimetres, so the depth must be 2 centimetres, and the length must be 2 centimetres. So you should have done 2 times 2 is 4, times by 2 gives the answer 8 centimetres cubed. Okay, next then we would have done 7 times 2, which is 14, and then 14 times by 4. So the answer we were looking for that one, so we're doing 14 times by 4. 4 times 4 is 16, 4 times 1 is 4, add my 1 is 56. 56 centimetres cubed. Okay, the next one we had to do 11 times 3 times 5. So first of all, 11 times 3 is 33, and then you needed to do 33 times 5, which would give you the answer 165 centimetres cubed. Okay, and the final one, we had to do 12 times 12 times 12. So 12 times 12 is 144, and then you needed to do 144 times 12, which gives the answer 1,728 centimetres cubed. Okay, hopefully you're getting on all right with that so far then, Year 6. When you go onto maths.co.uk today, you will get questions similar to those ones we've just looked at. But you also might get some worded problems, a little bit like the ones on the screen. So we're just going to have a little look at a couple of these together, so that hopefully you're confident with what to do when you get onto maths.co.uk. So the first one here then, we've got, here is the formula to calculate the volume of a cuboid. Length times width times height. Okay, that's exactly what I've just been saying. They've just used width instead of the word depth, but it's the same thing. Okay, remember, as long as you know the three measurements, it doesn't matter which one's which. Okay, to calculate the volume of the cuboid, what do we need to ask? Right, do we need to know how heavy it is? Do we need to know how long it is? Do we need to know if it's made of metal or wool? Do we need to know how wide it is? Do we need to know how high it is? Alright, the question says tick 3, so pause the video, see if you can work out which 3 we need to tick. Okay, the 3 we need to tick there, we don't need to know how heavy it is, but we do need to know how long, how wide, and how high, don't we? Okay, the next question is similar. Okay, here is the formula to calculate the volume of a cuboid. Look at the cuboid. Okay, without measuring it, can you use the formula to calculate the volume? So our options are yes, because it's a 3D shape. No, because you don't know the length. Yes, because it's a cuboid. Yes, because it has 6 faces. Or yes, because you know the height. Pause the video and see which one you think it is. Okay, the answer we were looking for was no, because you don't know the length. We know the height, we know the width or the depth, but we don't know the length of it. We need 3 numbers to be able to work out the volume of a cuboid, so that does not help us, does it? So at the moment, we cannot work it out yet, unless they tell us that length. Okay, at this point then, Year 6, I'd like you to pause the video and go onto maths.co.uk and complete your problem-solving activities. If you have done that and you want to have a go at the stretch, then just like the last couple of days, there is a separate sheet which is a stretch, has got some stretch questions on for you to have a go at. Once you've done your problem solving and maybe your stretch if you're choosing to do that, I want you to come back to this video and have a go at the reasoning and the plenary at the end. Okay, I've got a nice tricky plenary question for you to think about today as well. Okay, welcome back then, Year 6. Hopefully you've got on all right on maths.co.uk. Reasoning then, we have a question here for us to have a look at. So, it says you can make only 4 different cuboids with 16 cubes. Okay, so they're telling you that information. So we can have a long, thin cuboid that has a length that has got a width of 1, a height of 1, but a length of 16. Okay, we could have another cuboid that looks like this, that has got the dimensions 1, 2, and 8. So it's 8 long, 2 wide, 1 high. We've got one that looks like this, which is 1, 4, and 4. So it's 4 long and 4 wide. And we've got one that looks like this. Okay, so each of those cuboids use 16 cubes to make them. Now, we have got a question that says, which of the cuboids, A and D, has the largest surface area? Okay, when we're talking surface area, we're talking about the amount of squares on those little cubes that are facing the surface of the shape, the top of the shape, or the edges of the shape. So the amount, if I had that 3D shape in my hand, how many square faces could I see? Which one has got the most square faces that I could see? So we've either got to choose cuboid A, cuboid D, or both have the same. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is pause the video and have a think about that. But for this reasoning question, it's asking us to explain how we know the answer. Okay, so I'd like you to pause the video now and have a think about that. Okay, Year 6, if I was doing this, I would start to think about how many squares I can see on each one. So on A, along the top, I could see, I know there's 16 cubes there, and I could see the square face of all 16 of those cubes. So I could see 16 squares along the top. I could see 16 squares along the side. If I was holding it, I could see 16 squares along the bottom, and I could see 16 squares along the other side. So I could see all together, just around the edges of that shape, I could see 64 squares. And then there's 2 squares on each, there's 1 square on each end. So that makes 66. So I think the surface area of cuboid A is 66 squares. I think I can see 66. Cuboid D, just looking at that, I can see there's 8 on the top, and I can see 8 on the side, and there'll be 8 on the bottom as well, won't there? And 8 on the other side. So 8 add 8 is 16, add another 8 gives me 24, add another 8 gives me 32 so far, plus there's 4 on this end, plus there's 4 on the other end. So 32, add 4 is 36, add the other 4 gives me 40. Okay, so from that, I know that cuboid A has the largest surface area. Now explain how you know. Okay, I'd like you to pause the video again and see if you can have a go at doing your reasoning answer. How can you explain that? Okay then, year 6, here's what I would put to this question. I would start off by saying my answer. So cuboid A has a surface area of 66 squares. Cuboid D has a surface area of 40 squares. Okay. A, therefore, has the largest surface area. And then I would go into the detail. A has 16 squares visible, so we can see them. Visible on the top, 16 on the right side, 16 on the left side, and 16 on the bottom. It also has 2 squares visible on each end. The other thing I could add to my answer is the fact that cuboid D, there's lots of faces of the cubes, the little cubes that make it up, touching one another. So that is why cuboid A has got a larger surface area. So I'm going to go cuboid D has more faces of the smaller cubes, the small cubes touching one another and not facing the surface. Okay, see how I've done a really detailed answer there then, year 6, to that question. Okay, final thing we're going to have a look at today then, for our plenary then, is combining some of our learning from the last couple of lessons this week, but also from last week as well. So I've made this shape here, it's one big shape, and I want you to learn what you've use what you've learned over the last few lessons to work out what the area of this shape is in centimetres squared. Okay, so I'd like you to pause the video and have a think about this question and how you're going to approach it. Okay then, year 6. Hopefully you've spotted that this shape is broken down into different shapes. We've got a rectangle, we've got a square, we've got a triangle, and we've got a parallelogram. So first of all, I want to find the area of the rectangle. Now to find the area of a rectangle, we have to do the length times the width. So I'm going to do 2, if I count along the bottom there, I know it's 2 and 3. 2 times 3 gives me 6. And it's 6 centimetres cubed. But I'm just going to write 6 for now. Okay, to find the area of a square, you do you do the length times the width again, so it's going to be 2 times 2, so the area of that square is 4 centimetres squared. Area of a triangle, do you remember how to do that? How do you find the area of a triangle? Think back to Monday's lesson. Okay, to find the area of a triangle, we do the base times the height and half it. Really important that you half it. Right, base is 2, height is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, half it, 2 centimetres squared for that bit. And then we've got this lovely big parallelogram. Think back to yesterday's lesson. How do you find the area of a parallelogram? Okay, hopefully you remember you do the base times the height. And remember the height has to be the height that is straight up. So the base is 4, the height is 1, 2, 3, 4. The height is 4. So 4 times 4, the area of that parallelogram is 16. Right then, we've got to find the total area then. We've got to add them all up. 6 add 4 is 10, add my 2 is 12, add my 16, should hopefully give me the answer, 28 centimetres squared. Okay then, year 6, I hope you managed to answer that tricky question at the end there. Tomorrow we're moving on to looking at an investigation relating to this. So that's it for our maths.co.uk today. I hope you've enjoyed that lesson and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.